You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Urma Shemish Israel 5784, 2024. This week's Parsha Podcast is dedicated by Sarah Kukin in honor of her daughter's birthday. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Pinchos, and once again I'd like to mention that it's 17 years, Baruch Hashem. I started with Parsha's Pinchos 17 years ago, and every single week we've been going strong, sharing some insights and thoughts on the Parsha, studying together. I'd like to share with you something. This is really quite a broad topic, and I don't think we'll be able to get to every aspect of what's going on here, but certainly I can give you some food for thought, and you can explore some of this on your own. The Parsha has two concepts that are placed right next to each other, and the Medrash points out that there's a connection, a very deep connection between these two ideas. One is that the daughters of Tzlafchad died, and he left over 5 daughters. He didn't have any sons. And when Moshe Rabbeinu was about to distribute the land, or we spoke about the distribution of the land of Israel amongst the Shvatim, amongst the tribes, so the daughters of Tzlafchad said, why should we not have an opportunity to also have a portion in the land of Israel? Why should our family, as it were, be erased? And in so asking, and in so requesting, and in their love, it's showing their love for the land of Israel. So the Torah records for us and teaches us that indeed, when a man has no sons, so his daughters take the nachla, they take the inheritance. And the psukim ask, and it's not in our parsha, but it's in a later parsha, but the Torah requires or requests of them that they make sure to keep the nachla, that portion, within their own tribe, so that in theory they could bring that piece of land to a different tribe because they're inheriting it and they can marry somebody from a different tribe. But there's a request of them to keep it within the same tribe. That's the first point. The nachla of the Tzlafchad, the daughters of Tzlafchad. Immediately after that, the Torah gives us the request of Moshe Rabbeinu. It speaks of the fact that Moshe requests of Hashem. He's about to pass on from the world, and he wants to make sure that there is an heir to his throne, so to speak. His leadership needs to pass on to the next generation. So he says, Hashem, please appoint someone in order to lead the Jewish people wisely, with understanding of each and every individual. Hashem says it's going to be Yehoshua ben Nun, Moshe Rabbeinu's primary student, Joshua, who would indeed lead the Jewish people into the land of Israel and conquer the land, distribute the land, etc. So the Medrash gives us some very interesting connections between these two stories. The Benos Tzlafchad requesting their portion of the land of Israel, and Hashem appointing Yehoshua, the request of Moshe, for a new leader. These two ideas have a connection, and let's see them together. So part of it I can't read inside, there's just so much material here, but I'd like to mention that in speaking about the daughters of Tzlafchad, so the Medrash points out that with their request, so the result was that the Shevet of Menashe, which they were from Joseph, from Yosef, their Shevet was split in half. Half of the Nachla of the tribe of Menashe was received on the eastern side of the Jordan River, and half of it was received on the western side of the Jordan River, in Israel proper. Okay, so it's important to know that. And the Medrash tells us something amazing, which is that the daughters of Tzlafchad were able to actually receive a portion on both sides. So they got a portion that Moshe Rabbeinu gave them on the eastern side of the river, and then later in Sefer Yehoshua, they received also a portion on the western side of the Jordan River in Israel. And the Medrash points out that Yaakov Avinu, in giving a blessing to Joseph, so he said the words, Benois Tzoado Alishur, that the daughters, they marched by the wall, or on top of the wall. And the Medrash says that this wall, which was a demarcation line, where Moshe Rabbeinu was not allowed to enter, he was not allowed to pass the boundary, past the Jordan River, he had to stay, he was buried on the eastern side of the Jordan River, in what's today Jordan. That boundary, the daughters, your great-great-granddaughters, says the Medrash, Yosef's great-great-granddaughters would merit to be able to climb that wall. That's the implication of the pasuk, of the verse. They would climb that wall and they would have a portion on both sides of the wall. It's very interesting. Okay? And the Medrash there finishes off, and I will read this part. The pasuk says, "Va'avartes nachlas avian lahen," that you will give over the portion of their father to them. Ha'avarta, so it's a different language than is usually used. Nemer birishas haben unesatem. When it comes to a son, it says you will give. You will give the portion of the son. You give the portion of the father to the son. Babas va'avartem. But when it comes to a daughter, the verse says you will pass it over to the daughter. Because as we said, the idea is that there's a passing over. The woman serves as a conduit, because whoever she marries ends up with that nachla, ends up with that portion. So in theory, it can be passed over to a different shevet, a different tribe. In this case, they married people from their own tribe, so it was passed on to those people from their own tribe. But in theory, it can be transferred to a different tribe. That's why it uses a different language by the inheritance of a woman. Okay, so that's the first point. Just an interesting point, and we're going to see it actually has to do with Moshe Rabbeinu as well, in his request for a new leader for the Jewish people. So the next section, after speaking about the Tzlafchad, the daughters of Tzlafchad, it says, "Vayidaber Shem Moshe Lemar Alei al Har Nevoi." So Moshe Rabbeinu is told to go up on this great mountain, Har Nevo, and he's going to see the entire land of Israel. So the Medrash says, "Mara Loimer Achar Parshas Nachlas." Why does the Torah tell us this after the recording of the story of the Tzlafchad and the whole story with splitting up the land? So the first point here is, Moshe Rabbeinu heard the words, "You shall give it to them." So Hashem instructed Moshe to give to the Jewish people, that it would be given to them, or you shall give to them. He thought, oh, Hashem is telling me to give it to them. I perhaps have been forgiven, and I'm going to be the one to be able to bring them into the land of Israel. I'm going to be the one to serve, to give out their inheritances in the land of Israel, their respective portions in the land. He thought that he was forgiven. Hashem says, no, it's not true. You're going to go up on Har Avorim, and you're not going to be the one who gives them over the land. What happens next? So he says, the Medrash tells us an amazing thing. Very important thing. This is so deep and so important. We're going to see there's a great depth here and a tremendous personal lesson for each and every one of us in this regard. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, please, he doesn't even say the word please, as the Medrash is going to point out. Please appoint for the Jewish people someone who will take care of them, who will lead them, who will guide them, who will serve in my place. Says the Medrash, if you ask, if any individual cares about the tzibur, he cares about the Jewish people generally, and as a request to make for their welfare, for their good, you can make a demand. It's an interesting thing. We don't demand from Hashem anything. We ask, we are mischanin, we supplicate, we desire, we ask for rachamim, for compassion, for kindness. But when it comes to something that the tzibur, the entire Jewish people needs, we are allowed to demand. Maybe we're even enjoined to demand. Why did he request this? Oh, okay. That's the next point already. But it's very interesting. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he speaks to God and says the Jewish people need a new leader, he says it forcefully. He says, Hashem, we need a new leader. The Jewish people must have a new leader. Yifkoid. He doesn't say, please appoint. He says, appoint. He says that. It's very interesting. It's good to know. But here's the main point that I want to talk about. What happened was like this. Moshe Rabbeinu sees, right, that's the connection between the two parshas. Moshe Rabbeinu sees that the daughters of Tzelofchad requested that they should receive the portion that was given, apportioned to their father. Not only that, but they were found to be correct. Hashem said to Moshe that their request is justified. They will receive that portion. So Moshe says, okay, these girls receive their portion. I would like my children to receive their portion. I would like my children to also inherit my spiritual inheritance. Moshe says, I need to ask for my own needs, my spiritual needs. If it's true that these girls are going to get the physical inheritance of their father, which really represents a spiritual inheritance, it's the land of Israel, the inheritance, the place where we are, the place that we live, is part of the things that Hashem gives us in order for us to fulfill our purpose in life, our spiritual purpose in life. That's the power of having a portion in the land of Israel, right? Because ultimately the Jewish people's purpose is properly fulfilled in Israel. So he says, if they get, what about my kids? My sons should be the ones to take over for me. Moshe Rabbeinu had two sons, Gershom and Elazar, I forget exactly the name. He had two sons, and he felt that they should be the ones to take over as the next leaders of the Jewish people. But Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God says to him, it's fair that you ask that, I'm adding in, it's fair that you ask that, but that's not how it works when it comes to spiritual matters. When it comes to the leadership of the Jewish people, it doesn't go to the child, it doesn't go to the son because his father is great. That's just not how it goes. Medrash brings a pasuk in Mishlei. Hashem says to him, the one who protects the fig, the one who is the watchman over the figs, to make sure that nothing happens to them, that the bugs don't eat them, the birds don't come and take them away, that no robbers come and steal from the orchard. If you want to eat the sweet fruit, you have to watch over the fruit. The one who watches over the fruit ultimately is the one who eats the fruit. And the end of the pasuk is V'shomer Adon of Yechubad, which means that somebody who respects and shows honor to his master, to his teacher, he's the one who is honored. Hashem says the tough truth to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses. He says to them, your sons, they sat idly and they didn't put in their all when it came to studying the Torah. Yehoshua exerted every effort not just to study, but also to serve you. He served you. He came, he took care of you. He came to learn from you. He gave you honor. Right, like the end of the pasuk says, Shomer Adon of Yechubad. Who is honored? The one who takes care of his master. He used to come early and leave late from the place where you study Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu. He would get the benches in order. He would spread out the rugs upon which people would sit. We're going to see shortly another medrash which speaks about this very verse and tells us what was it that Yehoshua did in order to merit being the next leader of the Jewish people. So since he was so involved personally with him, he took every pain and every effort to serve Moshe, to serve the students of Moshe. He was involved in setting up the base medrash. He was the one who swept the floors. He was the one who took care of the whole physical aspect of the students of Moshe. So he's the one who is Kedai, Sheishamish Yisrael, that he's going to be the one to serve the Jewish people. He doesn't lose his reward. The one who exerts every effort, the one who honors his teacher, the one who does everything in order that the students should be able to study well, he's the one who inherits the teacher's position, the leadership position. He's the one who has learned how to take care of the flock. It's very interesting. Okay, so Yehoshua, Moshe says, my kids. Hashem says, no. Now we're going to come back to more of what Yehoshua did, but I'd like to point out that there's another piece in the Medrash at the very end of this piece. I'm not going to read everything because there's so much here, like I said, but at the end of the piece it says, we find, look, we see that Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, my kids, my sons maybe should be the next leaders, and Hashem says no. What I want to point out, before I get to this, I want to point out that the Medrash says that Hashem instructs Moshe to place his hand on Yehoshua, to give over his spiritual power to Yehoshua. And Moshe Rabbeinu places two hands on Yehoshua, because Moshe Rabbeinu, even though he wants his kids to be the next leaders, but when Hashem says it's going to be Yehoshua, Moshe gives over his power with Toiv Ayin Hu Yivorach. He has a good eye. He doesn't feel bad, or he doesn't express it at all that he has any negative sentiment towards Yehoshua. He gives over the full measure of leadership and Ruach HaKodesh, the divine inspiration. He gives it to Yehoshua. That's important to know. But Hashem gives him a certain consolation. And Moshe had asked that it go to his kids, and Moshe told the daughters of Tzelofchad, which is where he realized, hey, they're getting a nachla, they're getting an inheritance. What about my kids? So, just like, says the Medrash, it says by the daughters of Tzlafchad that they should marry people from their own tribe, so that the nachla not leave, the inheritance not leave the natural tribe for whom it's given, to whom it's given. Hashem also consoles Moshe and says, don't worry, even though Yehoshua is going to be the next leader of the Jewish people, the leadership position is not just one leader. There's not just one person who's in charge of the Jewish people. We had Moshe and Aaron, right? Moshe himself and his brother Aaron, the Kohen, the priests, they're the leaders. But it will continue into the next generation. The honor will still remain with your family, the Levite family. The verse says that Joshua would still need to consult with and discuss matters of leadership of the Jewish people, etc., with Elazar HaKohen. Elazar was Aaron's son. He was from the tribe of Levi. So Hashem consoled him and said, even though it seems like Yehoshua, who, by the way, is from Ephraim, who's also from Yosef, it seems like Yehoshua is taking away the leadership from your tribe, but don't think that, because it's staying by your tribe. Why? Because the leader is still not going to make any decisions on his own. He's going to consult with the Urim V'Tumim, God himself, as it were, but also Elazar HaKohen. They're going to work on things together. Your nephew, Elazar, is still going to be part of the leadership of the Jewish people, so it's going to stay by you. So it comes out something very interesting, which is that the Bnei Tzlafchad are from Yosef, they're from Menashe, they're the daughters. There's a certain aspect, as we said, of Avora. They could, in theory, transfer it over to a different tribe. Right? The Nachla could end up, if they marry someone from a different tribe, it could end up by somebody else. But they're instructed to make sure it stays by their tribe. And Moshe has a leader who he's appointing, who is Yehoshua, who's also from the tribe of Yosef. He's from Ephraim. Right? But he also is not going to really take away the leadership. This is important to understand. If you want to know, I talked about in my Mashiach podcast about Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef doesn't take the Malucha for himself, right? Think about Yosef in relationship to Paro, in relation to Pharaoh. Think of Mordechai HaTzadik in relationship to Achashverosh. They were leaders. They were second in command. They didn't take away the power from the main leader. And Mashiach ben Yosef ultimately will also not take away power from the real leader of the Jewish people, who is Mashiach ben David. It's just a cool thing to know. Yehoshua doesn't take away the leadership from the original leader. He still consults with the Levite, the Kohen Gadol, Elazar HaKohen. It's very interesting. Okay. Now I want to share with you one more point, which I think is the most nogea to us, the most, something that we can learn from. And that is found earlier in the Marzu brought me to this medrash. It's earlier in Parshas Nasai, in Parsha Yud Beis, section Siman Tes. It brings the verse that we quoted earlier, which talks about the fig. If you want to be able to enjoy the delectable, delicious fig, the delicious fruit, so you need to protect it. You need to watch over it. The one who watches over it is the one who gets to enjoy the benefits of the fruit. So he said how Yehoshua, because he respected his master, and how he took care of the Beis Medrash, because he cared about the other students, so he ended up being the one who would serve the entire Jewish people. But there's more to it. The verse is talking about Joshua, who was the one who served Moshe Rabbeinu. The verse tells us that Yehoshua was his Mesharis. He served Moshe. He was there taking care of his needs. And he didn't leave the tent of learning, the Beis Medrash. And the Medrash says something incredible. You want to know why Yehoshua was appointed, and how we can become leaders and great people, whether it's in our own seviva, our own family, or whether it's in relationship to others around us, our synagogues, our shuls, our communities. Sheroi Vailana says, why do we use the mashal? Why is the Torah, Yehoshua represents the one who studied Torah and therefore became the leader of the Jewish people? Why is he compared to a fig tree? What's special about a fig tree? The grapevine, which is behind me, and the zayit, the olive tree, which is above me, Hatamara, the date tree, which I don't have one. I do have a rimon tree we planted recently here. Nilkatim ke'achas. So when you bring the fruits in, so you gather them all at once. But when it comes to picking the figs, so the fruits don't all come out at the same time. There's a number of, it rolls out, so to speak, over some time. And therefore, you'll take them smaller amounts of figs at a time. And you'll have it for a longer time. So what? Also, when it comes to Torah, it's not something, the study of Torah is a unique type of limud, of studying. We study the Torah a little bit at a time. Those who learn the Daf Yomi, learn a Daf at a time. Those who listen to this Parsha Podcast, listen to it 1 week at a time. And it adds up. It adds up. You want to study Torah, you want to understand the will of Hashem, you want to get to the depth, you want to have an intuitive understanding, feeling, and das Torah. So you need to do it one day, another day, day after day, year after year. And it's not something that you acquire in just one day or just 1 year. It takes many years. Allah never nicer to Eina. That's why it says that such a person will be able to it says nicer to Eina. The one who watches over the fruits is the one who eats the fruits. The one who comes consistently. Yehoshua was there every single day, inside of the oil, inside of the tent. Lo yomu, she wouldn't leave the tent. The one who is consistent, constantly learning. A little bit. It doesn't have to be, I wish that I could learn all day long. I wish I could study Torah all day long. But it's not always possible for us. But to have that consistency, a learning every day, a daf a day, or an amud a day, or a seif in Shulchan Aruch a day, whatever it is that your heart, or a medrash a day, try to learn medrash every day. Whatever it is that you connect to in Torah, make it consistent. Make it consistent. That's what makes us into Torah people. That's what gives it that sweet, sweet taste of Torah in our lives. It's that consistency. It's that learning over and over again. That's what makes leaders. That's where it becomes. I just said to one of my kids, who's now, my 15-year-old is running a small camp for 11-year-olds. And she had a tough few first days. And I said, you become more intuitive. As it goes into your guts, the more you do it, the more you know what to do. The more you get a feel for what to do. L'havdil, that's true by Torah. The more you learn, the more you try to understand, more of a depth you have in it. Every week, and it adds up. 17 years. 17 years of Parsha Podcasts. Pre-Shel Torah. What does it mean that you eat the fruits? We're going to finish off shortly. What does it mean that you eat the fruits? Pre-Shel Torah, Malchus V'Saros. The fruit of Torah, the delicious fruit that you invest every single day and over for years, the fruit that you get, the result is you get kingship and you get leadership. Pasuk says in Mishlei, through me, through the Torah, kings become kings. A true king, a humble king, a King David. The Torah tells us the king has to have his tefillin on one side and a Sefer Torah on the other side. Kings become kings through their humility, through their subjugation to Torah, to Hashem's will. They become leaders. They become kings. This is exactly what happened to Joshua. As we said, Moshe's sons didn't inherit his place. The one who watches over his master. The word shomer means two things. It means to protect. It also can mean to wait with anticipation. It says by Yaakov, when he heard the dreams of Yosef, he was waiting with anticipation when they would be fulfilled. So Yehoshua waits with anticipation. He's studying the Torah every day. He's also watching over his teacher. He's learning from his teacher. He was serving him day and night. He stood up for his honor. He said, what was the result? It ends up saying the same idea, that ultimately the leadership didn't leave the tribe of Levi, but Elazar, who was Moshe Rabbeinu's nephew, also was part of the leadership of the Jewish people. Yehoshua would turn to Elazar, he would stand in front of Elazar, and together they would work together in order to lead the Jewish people. So I want to bless you, and I ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us to understand, what does it mean to become leaders? How do we lead our families? How do we lead in our communities? It's through the constant. Hashem should help us understand and have the ability to constantly study, constantly learn His Torah, grow in our intuition of what is Hashem's will. Hashem should help us to be able to recognize that the leader is a conduit, just like Yehoshua is the conduit, but it doesn't take away the leadership from the tribe of Levi. He serves alongside. And the daughters of Tzlafchad wanted their portion in Israel. They wanted their purpose. But it was just a conduit. They acted as a conduit for their children and their families, for it to remain there with their families. You should understand, that's the purpose of a leader. We should be those kinds of leaders who are able to help others, facilitate others' growth. Hashem should help us to continue to grow and grow in our relationship with Him. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.